Every time new commanders land in game, I make a guide for that specific troop type, and the time has finally come where we understand enough about Liu Che and Gorgo and their best pairings to make a video showcasing the best infantry pairs as of the release of Gorgo and Liu Che in the Rise of Kingdoms. So stick around for all the things you want to know. The best pairings, the best talents, I'll even talk about the best equipment for infantry. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And as I said earlier, every time a new commander is released into the game, I make a dedicated video about that troop type, talking about everything you'd want to know. So use the timestamps in the description of this video to navigate to any part of the video you're most interested in. We're going to start with the best infantry combos. Then I'm going to give you the best 1, 2, and 3 March infantry combinations, and I'll even talk about talents, and at the very end, I'll give you the very best equipment to work on for infantry, and I actually do have that equipment. Now, although Liu Che is not actually maxed on this particular account, I have him maxed on another account, and I did that on the very first day he came into the game, and I fought with him in the open field. In fact, I fought with him a lot. So I have personal experience actually fighting with this meta, and I have personal experience using the overwhelming majority of the commanders in the game in the open field, which is, I think, part of what qualifies me to make these videos. Consider subscribing. So let's talk about the top 4 infantry pairs. And this one is going to be controversial because 1960 actually, I think would rate this as one of the best infantry pairs, but I would put it at personally number 4 for me. And that is Tariq ibn Ziyad paired with Liu Che. This is our number 4 best infantry pair. Now, why is this performing well for them in 1960? First of all, they're all whales, okay? If you haven't heard of 1960, they've won every single KVK that they've played, literally. And they've won an outstanding amount of Ark of Osiris League. But the thing that Tariq ibn Ziyad does well in the open field, despite having no defensive stats whatsoever, is that he does a lot of damage factor on his active skill to a single target. And that's pretty much it. He does also have a debuff, and Liu Che has a chance to do an extra normal attack when expertised. So you do have a slightly increased number of opportunities to trigger the rage reduction onto a target, but the real reason you use Tariq ibn Ziyad with Liu Che in the open field is just to crank out a lot of damage. I would rate this as number 4. I actually think there are better infantry combos, and a better infantry combo is Liu Che paired with Sargon. Now, this combo we know tests really, 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 really well in duels. And this is in no small part because Sargon is doing damage over multiple turns, and your target is standing still. But I will still argue that Liu Che with Sargon is a way more important combo than Tariq ibn Ziyad with Liu Che. And the reason I will advocate for that is that the ability to put a skill damage taken debuff onto the enemy is massive. Now look, this could be a video entirely in and of itself, so I'll cover this only very briefly. But we saw the king of 1960, Leopard, okay, with what is it? He's over like 500 million power, 400 million power, some insane number. Okay, he's got all the things in the game that you could want. He battled versus Baba. Okay, Baba's one of the strongest players by power in the game. And the two of them fought 7 marches versus 7 marches. And who won? It was Baba. And what did Baba do? He brought in more skill damage debuffs onto the enemy, making them take more skill damage. Now, in particular, he brought in Tommy into his lineup. So if he was bringing Tommy before she even had a museum buff, I'm telling you, if you sleep on skill damage taken, I think it's a mistake. And I think that even though Liu Che and Gorgo are now a part of the Smite meta, at this moment in time, Sargon the Great, in my opinion, with that debuff, is very critical to any, I would say, 6 or 7 March murder ball. I would say at 5 marches, he's less necessary. But I think for endgame players, and we're talking about the best of the best, I think Liu Che with Sargon, I would say that's the number 3 best infantry pair. By the way, if you're getting value from this video so far, do me the honor of smashing the like button and subscribing to the channel for daily Rise of Kingdoms videos designed to help you get value and smash your enemies. From here, we go to the number 2 infantry pair, and this one might surprise you, although I made a video about it recently. It's Gorgo primary with Liu Che secondary. Dude, it works. It's doing extremely well in duels. I think it's the best infantry duel in the game right now. Of course, dueling is not the way the game is played, so what does it bring you for the open field? Well, it makes your target take 30% more normal attack damage, and it reduces the attack of 5 nearby enemies by 30% for what is it, 3 seconds? Seems pretty good. Now, this only starts to trigger when she's below 50%, but the real reason that Gorgo primary with Liu Che is amazing is that they're both smite commanders. So they both scale with normal attack damage, and when you pair them together, it's just really nutty, which you would probably expect. I mean, heck, you know, you're doing smite damage on Gorgo, and then Liu Che has an ability, I think it's his 4th skill, right? So you do more normal attack damage, and whenever their troop deals smite damage, it reduces the damage dealt by the target. I mean, look, this synergy is unreal. I think Gorgo Liu Che is the number 2 best infantry combo in the game, hands down. But there is a combo that beats it. And your number 1 infantry combo in the game, in my opinion, is going to be Scipio Prime with Liu Che. I mean, this feels pretty obvious, right? Scipio Prime, if you're just bringing like one march in the open field for infantry, obviously Scipio Prime has to be a part of it. And Liu Che does some really nutty things. Extra normal attacks means extra chances to trigger the damage over time ability on your Scipio. The two of them together are just so high power level. I would say this is obviously your number 1 infantry combo in the game. And it's super powerful. And if, again, you're bringing only 1 infantry march in the open field, Scipio with Liu Che as the way. The Scipio primary also gives you really great skill damage taken mitigation from the support tree. And I suppose we can shift over to talent builds, but if you wanted, I think, slightly more punch, the Liu Che as the primary might actually be the better choice. But overall, I think the Scipio Prime is the better choice here. 2 points very intentionally put into Rejuvenate if you're going to use Scipio Prime as your primary over here. That is because of the rage capping mechanic. You can only generate 220 rage per turn, and you get no bonus points for extra rage. So, yeah, this is exactly the amount of rage I think you want to generate here, combined with, you know, other talents and things that you'll have running. So this is the build I would use on the Scipio Prime if you're using him as the primary. With regard to Gorgo, I don't have her level 60 yet, but I can show you the exact same talent trees on a Charles Martel. So if you're using Gorgo in the open field, I think your best Gorgo field build looks like this. It's kind of a weird one because I have maxed the infantry tree for elite soldiers, also strong of body, and I really want the march speed from fleet of foot and also some extra health. There are some alternatives you could advocate for. However, if you care less about march speed, instead of stopping at the points in march speed over here, you could instead go for balance, reducing the damage dealt and taken of your march. You could go for testudo formation, which I don't love. This makes it so that when you normal attack, you have a 10% chance to reduce your damage taken by 15% for 1 second. It's the next round. That sounds really cool until you realize that's basically just like a 1.5% damage taken reduction on average. Like, you generally only do 1 normal attack per turn, unless you pair with Liu Che. And if you're paired with Liu Che, which I am advocating for, this actually is slightly more interesting. I mean, you have a small chance of doing an extra normal attack, but like, actually starts to look pretty good. Testudo formation, I would argue, would be a higher priority than balance if that's what you were going to do. In fact, hey, look, let me just show you. If you felt like you didn't need the march speed, and I think you will need the march speed, by the way, there's several ways you actually could run this. I feel like loose formation is truly not optional. I feel like 1.5% damage reduction is also kind of not optional, but we're going to talk about this in a second. So you max out these over here, and like, this is where it leaves you if you go for testudo formation. So you can kind of see why, I don't know, I like the 6% of March speed. Gorgo's weakness is she has no March speed. You're already getting 1.5% damage taken reduction over here. I think that just the tragedy is these 3 points. These 3 points really wreck you from being able to do what I think is better, which, as I mentioned, you go over here, right? If you're using Gorgo as the primary, you max this over here, getting the skill damage taken reduction. Just reduce the damage you take. I love getting 2 points for 6% of March speed, right? Love to see it. That left me with 4 points. So either you get fleet of foot and health, which is what I was recommending, or you could go for balance, or you could carve a lot of stuff and go for the testudo formation, but I think this is probably the play right over here. Now, if you are using Liu Che as the primary, I do have that build for you. You may be wondering, why haven't you maxed Liu Che on your main account? Well, we've got a Kingsland fight coming up. I probably max him before Kingsland, but like I have so many open field commanders. Like, yeah, he's good. But do I absolutely have to have him given I already have such a deep collection of commanders to pull from? No. Like I could just spin his wheel more and then have more universals and max more commanders, right? Instead of dumping a bunch of universals into him. And that's the way I'm thinking about commander investing these days. It's really weird. If I wanted sculpture efficiency, then I'm going to go this route I'm on, which is spin the wheel more, right? If I want resource and speed up efficiency, then I spend the sculptures now and max commanders now. Now, if he's a part of a meta rally or garrison, that's a different story. I'll max him right away, no questions asked. So we're really just talking about fielding there. But here is the field build I'd recommend for your Liu Che if you're going to use him as the primary. I think in the Liu Che Sargon combo, that is the way. I'll have a card up in the top, but I did demonstrate that in a video where we went, and we were pretty scientific, but we sort of proved that you improve your trade ratio by about 3,000 sev wounds if Liu Che is the primary. I think that in real world applications, if the Sargon's the primary or the Liu Che is the primary, it's going to be so close, you're probably not going to notice the difference all that much. And the final commander that we need to talk about as a primary commander is the Tariq ibn Ziyad with Liu Che. So if that's the route you're going to go, I can pull up Tariq ibn Ziyad. It is funny, here I didn't go for the March speed, and the other build I did. That's because when I was fielding with Tariq ibn Ziyad, I had him paired with Sargon the Great, so like both of them have a lot of March speed, so I went with the damage mitigation instead. But this is a field build you could do if you're using Tariq ibn Ziyad. It's the same as the Gorgo, same talent trees, all right? And if for some reason, I suppose you were using Sargon as the primary, give you one final thing to consider here. This is a build you could use. It's a more mobile build. Rather than this speed build, honestly, these days, I much prefer a build that is more focused on generating rage. So I would call this rage, and we just go and we max feral nature. Very straightforward here. We go and we max hold the line. Very critical. Okay. We max strong of body, because you never leave home without it. And we're going to go over here. Drop 2 points into the March speed for infantry, and a few points like that, right? So this is what I would recommend for Sargon for the open field these days. If for some reason you really were hurting for March speed, you could go with the speed build I have over here, but these days I would much rather generate rage, I think, than have that extra bit of speed. And it is really funny how, as a community, we went from rage good to over rage bad back to actually rage good. And over rage is fine. You still want rage so much that you'll over rage and you don't care. So anyways, feral nature, really good here. So this brings us to a lot of commanders that and pairings that I want to give you as honorable mentions, because you may be shocked that Guan was not in my top 4 infantry pairs list if you're bringing only one march to the open field. And so, like, obviously the honorable mention here is Guan with Scipio Prime, because that combo is awesome. And just because it didn't make my top 4 most busted pairs in the game doesn't mean it's not good. I think, you know, the obvious thing that happened in my top 4 list there is every single commander I paired with Liu Che. So, like, Guan is not a particularly good pair with Liu Che, so we didn't make the list. And it's actually kind of that simple. But Guan with either Scipio Prime, Liu Che, Sargon, Honda, CJ, or if you were really slumming it, Alex, would be a really fine set of combos as honorable mentions with a Guan primary. If you were using Sargon the Great as a primary, and I suppose I should just filter by infantry to make my life easier here, then you also have several really great options here. I didn't mention Sargon with Scipio in my top 4 infantry pairs, but it's like right up there as a runner-up. Sargon with Honda is good. Sargon with Mehmed is okay. Sargon with CJ is passable. You have a lot of Sargon combos that are honestly fine and are going to do great in the open field. And then lastly, we have a bunch of Scipio prime combos. These are all worth mentioning. Scipio with Honda, Scipio with Mehmed, Scipio with Alex, Scipio with CJ. All of those are going to work great, okay? And didn't make the top 4 infantry pairs because these are like the best of the best, okay? And this leaves very few commanders that are just like not really worth using in the open field. For example, you've got Pakal, who really doesn't do much for you other than Pakal with Herald. And Herald also is on the list of commanders that are not really worth using. You've got Richard I, who is like a super technical play if you want the slow specifically and you know exactly what you're doing. Then you could bring in Richard I. Constantine is a no-go for the open field, although he is shockingly good with Gorgo in the garrison. And, you know, Leonidas is another no-go. A bunch of these commanders that were once good just aren't really anymore. Martel, actually, you can get away with, weirdly enough. Martel Scipio will surprise you. That combo actually will surprise you, but it's not meta. So that's all the honorable mentions. But we need to get down to the practical applications here. Chisgule told us the top 4 infantry pairs, but like, I'm not using 1 infantry pair, I'm using 2. Or I'm using 3 infantry pairs. Let me map that out for you and show you exactly what I'd recommend. Okay, here we are in Tier Maker, the most powerful tool in all the land. And obviously, I mentioned that if you're bringing just like 1 infantry pair, Scipio Prime with Liu Che is just busted. And I'm going to stand by that. I think it is really, really powerful. But if you're bringing 2 infantry marches, what do you do? And I think this is where, in my eyes, you have several high-quality candidates for bringing in. I think Sargon is extremely important to bring in. I think Guan is extremely important to bring in. I actually think that Tariq ibn Ziyad is not. So I would go like this. I would take Guan, pair with Scipio, and I would take Liu Che and pair with Sargon. And that's how I would run it. You could, of course, also make a case for bringing in Tariq ibn Ziyad and running it like this. Tariq ibn Ziyad with Liu Che. I think this would also be fine. Now, you may notice, wait, Chisgule said Gorgo was really good, but he didn't bring in Gorgo. Like, what's going on here? And I think you also could bring in Gorgo, and it would be really strong. In fact, I might prefer Gorgo to the Tariq ibn Ziyad, and I'd run it like that. But still, I think skill damage meta, I think the skill damage meta is still here. So I feel like bringing in the Sargon is really key. So we're like dancing between all these different commanders that do debuffs. So if you still believe in skill damage, right, then you're going to bring in the Sargon. You've got it. And I think this is more relevant for players with 6 or 7 marches that you would want to bring in Sargon. And the silence on Guan is insane. Scipio Prime is not at all in contention. Liu Che is not at all in contention. So we're just kind of looking at, like, which commander do you swap out? And what debuffs do you care about more? Do you care about the area of effect damage and silence from the Guan? Or do you care about the normal attack damage taken debuff and the attack debuff from the Gorgo? I think you prefer it like this. I actually think this is a better way to run it. I do. This would be my preferred way of running it. But when you get to 3 pairs, okay, now we can start to have fun with all these different commanders. Now we can do it. So what do we do if we bring 3 infantry marches? Well, Gorgo and Liu Che is kind of like a slam dunk. And obviously, Sargon is back in the mix. So if Sargon is back on the menu, how does the rest of this change around? I mean, I think that Tariq ibn Ziyad is the next sort of obvious choice, with Honda as another really great choice, by the way. So depending on your philosophy, you're either going to bring in Honda or Tariq ibn Ziyad. And I think Guan Scipio is just really good. I'm so hard-pressed to break up that combo. I really am. The shield synergy is very good, but you can kind of accomplish the same thing with a Sargon, and I probably would end up switching it like this. This is how I would probably end up changing it. Guan with Sargon. Gorgo should be primary. What am I doing? With Liu Che. And Scipio with Tariq ibn Ziyad. And that to me feels like great damage. You've made no real compromises here other than missing some march speed in your Liu Che combo. But as I showed you in the talent builds, you can hunt more march speed talents to offset that. The only other commander that like is flex here would be Honda Tadakatsu, right? So if you didn't have Tariq ibn Ziyad, you could use Honda. If you didn't have Sargon, you could use Honda. I have used Guan Honda. That combo slaps, man. It's great. Great combo. You could also use CJ. Okay, Scipio CJ, Guan CJ. You have so many options here. You could use Scipio Prime with Mehmed. Okay, double relic. Very strong. So you actually have a lot of options here if you're going to 3 infantry marches. And I actually think now more than ever, 3 infantry marches actually seems like a viable option to me. If you were really crazy, okay, you even could go to 4 marches. And I can't believe this is actually a thing that you could consider. But if you're going to 4 marches, at that point, right, now we're looking at definitely using Trajan. So if you're bringing in 4 marches, you would certainly bring in Trajan. And I really like Trajan with Scipio for optimizing my damage output. That leaves me with a weird situation. I need to find another infantry commander to bring in. It's either going to be CJ or it's going to be Honda Tadakatsu. And it maybe ends up with you looking something like this. The biggest downfall of this is that the Sargon with Tariq ibn Ziyad combo only does single target damage, and I really dislike that. That makes me very uncomfortable. I still think, however, that's better than trying to put CJ in that combo, which to me doesn't make any sense. So this would be a way that you could run 4 infantry, and I actually think this is totally fine. Do I think this is the, infantry is the best combo to move in on 4 with? Not really. I mean, I feel like if you're going to bring 3 DPS marches, cavalry right now are just looking really good. Archers are always in style, quite frankly. But if you were going down to 3 marches and you wanted to use Trajan, in that case, here's how I'd run the Trajan. So Gorgo, Liu Che, Guan with Sargon, and then Trajan with Scipio. And I must be defending Scipio like with Trajan, I don't know, every other week in a video, but you have to remember, like, if you can have a march that on average trades even, but is dramatically elevating the damage and also, I mean, let's lay it out exactly. You make the target take more damage by, like, what is it, 20%? You make your team do 30% more skill damage, and you generate 50 rage per second for 3 seconds. I have been pretty happy with this combo, although my big gripe with leadership is we just really have no clue what the future of open field leadership looks like. I have honestly no clue, so I can't at this moment in time recommend open field leadership investments. This is more a thing you do if you have it. Otherwise, I would honestly steer you away from getting involved with leadership gear at this moment in time, unless you are a garrison captain and you are dead set on like Hero ISS, and you're really hopeful that they're just going to continue to release good leadership garrisons, which is probably true. But leadership for me, I would love more clarity of direction personally, in terms of like, can we, invest what it takes to make a meta set of gear for that, designation, leadership? Yes, no. Right now, I'm lukewarm on that. Speaking of equipment though, let's jump back in game and talk about the best equipment. But because I'm an infantry main, I've actually played around with just a lot of different infantry equipment. And, in this video, I'm not going to rehash why ring and horn are pretty much the best accessories on almost every commander you're going to run. You pretty much want all rings and horns, except in my opinion, I like to have 1 web and 1 dagger in my lineup. And I like to have those in the lineup for the debuffs because, it scales up with every single thing that hits the same target. And if your 6 or 7 marches are all, hitting a target with less health and less defense, that seems really good to me, right? But with regard to infantry, I actually think that the 6-piece bonus, which I have, by the way, I'm not equipping it at this moment, but I have the 6-piece bonus. I actually think it's not great. Attack is one of the least important stats. That's your 6-piece bonus. The 4-piece bonus is even march speed. So for rallying, it's completely unnecessary, as well as for garrisoning, to have the 4-piece bonus for infantry. So I made this set for Ark of Osiris because march speed and attack is really good there. You want to end fights faster and you don't care about trades. But most people, most of the time, actually just care about trades. And I would say, I might use the word regret to describe building out the infantry set, except big changes are coming to the equipment system. I feel like those were supposed to be here already, but they're not, which means probably the developers are putting a lot more thought and effort into it, which I'm never opposed to that. So there are changes coming to the equipment system where this could become very good, but the actual best set to use, in my opinion, is if we instead go over and do this over here. So KVK weapon, KVK helmet, Hope Cloak, and Eternal Night, and then the 2-piece bonus from the infantry set for gloves and legs, or boots rather. This, I think, is the best you can do, specifically if you care about infantry. But you're probably looking at this going, that is extremely unrelatable. I am a new player. What am I supposed to do as a new player in the game? And I got great news for you. We can go slot by slot very briefly, and I will be fast here and point out a couple things. First of all, use this blue shield and basically don't upgrade from it until your very last upgrade. No cap. Like that, you do the very last upgrade is this blue shield. Health is generally better than defense, is generally better than attack. So just go with this blue shield. It's low materials. You can even see I have it equipped for Canyon right now on, infantry march and also my Trajan. I'm telling you, this is busted. Make this. Don't even bother with the Sakura Fubuki. Don't even bother with the Shield of the Eternal Empire. You don't need any of these things at this moment in time. Okay. From here, helmets. The infantry helmet, unfortunately, has attack. So upgrading to legendary is actually a huge priority for you. Until you get to legendary, it's kind of awkward. Your next best option is still not great. It's the Windswept War Helmet, which is a bit of a yikes. So that's march speed and attack. So I think you do need to bite the bullet on Witch's Lineage and live with this for a while. But then as soon as you can afford to, you want to upgrade to this helmet over here, either the KVK helmet or the set helmet, in order to get extra defense. Now, in a perfect world, it's actually the KVK helmet because they reduce the material cost. And so now it's just straight up value to go for the KVK helmet. But I think the set helmet is also fine if you're going to go ultimately for the 4-piece bonus. I actually think you generally shouldn't go for the 4-piece bonus, however. So best upgrade would be the KVK helmet. If you are a spender and you have materials and you're getting access to things earlier, then you would make this infantry helmet and call it at that. From here, we need to talk about gloves. For gloves, I think this is a pretty great upgrade into the Van Braces of the Eternal Empire. You're going to go for that 2-piece bonus I was describing. You can see I have this on 3 different sets of commanders right now, and it gives you 3% defense. However, this is kind of a low priority upgrade. You're going to stick with your infantry Seth's Brutality, 5.5% defense for quite a while. In fact, you even have Calvin's Hand, which is very good for a very long time. It's giving you attack, that's not amazing, but 5% of stats compared to 5.5% of stats that you got over here. So, yeah, like you can just stick with Calvin's Hand for an extremely long time. Very, very good item here. Stick with this for a while. So, gloves are actually not a priority upgrade. If we get a look at the boots, your boots over here have defense. And you also have an option, if I'm not mistaken, for health. So boots are also a low priority upgrade. Look, you could start with the Scarlet Hounds and these things freaking slap, man. And like, yeah, you get slightly more stats going to the Frost Treads, but like you honestly can stick with the Scarlet Hounds for a very long time. So if the helmet should be a KVK helmet, it is a priority, but it should be the KVK helmet. And the gloves and the boots are not a priority. The weapon's not a priority. Now we need to talk about other things. And like, weirdly enough, the legs are also not a priority. So for legs, you just want to make Karak's humility and stick with this for a very long time. Epic tier, this is a very important thing to get. You stick with this, you make this, you use it for a very long time. This is like one of the last things you upgrade, right? It's weapon and legs, or like the actual last things you upgrade. So that leaves one thing that is the obvious thing that is a priority, and it's the chest piece. The chest piece over here gives you 8% attack. Your next best option is giving you a small amount of defense and march speed. Not amazing, okay? So you're going to make Quinn Soul, you're going to live with it for a while, but as soon as you can make a Hope Cloak, this is your top priority upgrade, in my opinion, as of the time of this recording, for your infantry. This could change when they release upgrades to the equipment system, and you can tier up equipment even further. I've covered that in a separate video. I'll mention that card in the end screen in just a minute here, but 12% defense is a great upgrade from attack. So you go from like a crit on this, which is going to be 10.5% attack, to 12% defense. And if you crit this, you're sitting on 16%. So yeah, Hope Cloak's amazing. You want this. Do this. This is what you want. Priority upgrade. Get to a Hope Cloak. Of course, I've covered this extensively in other videos, as I've mentioned. So if you're looking for the best equipment upgrades in the game as of the time of this recording, I'll have a card in the end screen. Alternatively, if you're like, hey, Chisgule, this video was really helpful. Could you show me like what you would recommend for the open field for all my marches? I've done that as well. Card will be in the end screen in just a second. If you enjoyed this one, do me the honor of subscribing to the channel, throw a like on the vid, and until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.